Thank you, Sudhakar ji. At the outset, I owe to thank the citizens of democracy and the office bearers for having invited me over here and given me the opportunity to be with you all on this lovely Sunday morning. I am sure when I go back from here, I shall go back wiser than before, and I look forward to this as an educative experience for myself, learning from all those interventions and expressions that emanate during this session. Madam Dr. Susila ji, my friend Sudhakar ji, and a young friend Rahul. I don't know where to start from, but since the assignment today is to confine to the interlocutor's report, you see, as far as we belonging to this ideology and this line of thinking are concerned, within the party and outside, I am talking of the larger family of the common Vichardhara that we've been following. We've always held this view that, in fact, even when this announcement of the formation of this interlocutors committee was concerned, that there is no need for having a committee like this, because we do not think that there is an issue in the English language. Issue has a negative analogy. It's not absolutely as it is translated into Hindi, and as we, even in Sangh Parivar, we say Vishay prastut kare, और अंग्रेजी में कहते हैं the issue is present. So issue has a negative connotation in English language. I have issues with you means I have some problem with you. So we don't consider it an issue. There is no issue. The state of Jammu and Kashmir is as good or as bad as the state of Andhra Pradesh, with all the accompanying good and bad things ranging from politicking to corruption. So what is the difference? Now, if you go back, before I come to the interlocutor's report, I'll just take about 10-15 minutes. The story of what has happened in Jammu and Kashmir is in fact a story of not only politicking, but story of vested interests, story of personal affiliations, personal likes and dislikes. And the major factor that we have tended to ignore, for reasons which were more convenient to us, is that Jammu Kashmir, if at all is an issue because, as I said, it has a negative connotation, the word issue itself, because it's part of the unfinished agenda of Pakistan. It's not India. Because right from the time of partition, Pakistan was not contented with having parted with the part of Jammu and Kashmir that is with India now. So that is the issue. We also tried to sanctify it through Parliament in 1994. Through a unanimous all-party resolution which stated that as far as we are concerned, the only task left for us is to strategize, contemplate how to get back the part of Jammu and Kashmir which is with Pakistan. So once that becomes a part of the Parliament minutes, becomes a part of the government policy, I don't know what is this business of constituting committees and what for. Unfortunately, as I was also responding to a question yesterday in Bangalore, the problem in India is that we never close a chapter. We are politically still evolving. You see, way back sometime in 1966, when the 1965 war had just happened and this Kashmir dispute thing had again rigged up, President Lyndon Johnson, who had taken over from Kennedy, was addressing a press conference, and there was an Indian journalist, Mr. Inderjeet, who later on also started a news agency called Infa. I used to contribute to that news agency write-ups for many years in 90s. He was also later on an MP, Member of Parliament. So Inderjeet put a question to Johnson that you are talking about this accession business. So is it Texas not annexed by USA? And Johnson immediately interrupted him, snubbed him and said, look here gentlemen, that is a closed chapter. We no longer discuss it. Now unfortunately in India, we don't have closed chapters. In fact, we are always looking for the chapters which can be reopened. Because we are into politicking. If I have to be one up in this game of politics, then I have to look for some issue which is settled, but which could be made to appear unsettled. At the time of partition itself, I think a bad beginning was made, unfortunately, by the then Prime Minister, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru. I have been a great personal admirer of Jawaharlal Nehru. I have read Discovery of India more than 50 times, and just as I tell everybody that if you have a problem, a dilemma in life, you refer to Bhagavad Gita, and if you want an immediate reference to the history, you refer to Discovery of India, which Panditji wrote in mere 11 months, sitting in Ahmednagar jail near Pune. But he was a great historian, a great orator, a theatrical speaker. But the problem is, at the time of partition, he crossed his brief and took over from Sardar Patel the responsibility of handling the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Whereas as Home Minister, Sardar Patel was dealing with more than 560 odd states. But since Panditji thought that he knew Jammu Kashmir better, and he was also hailed from that place, and he could do greater service to his community, the service, the outcome of which is Rahul sitting as a migrant, a descendant of Panditji. So, since we live in an evidence-based era, I always try to put the argument with the evidence, because otherwise you will be always dubbed as reactionaries. You have to carry the discourse to their doors. Whose Balidan Divas happens to be on 23rd June, and then it culminates on 6th of July, his birth anniversary, is also to educate and share with our friends how to counter these arguments to campaign, because the campaign in the years to come, in the times to come, is going to be scientifically based. You can't simply say that I don't agree with this. Look here, I got killed, my ancestor got killed. He said, no, so what? So many people get killed. The world goes on. You have to carry the discourse to their doorstep. In the next couple of minutes, I'll try to explain to you how we plan to do so. At the time of partition, there were two parts of India, because this debate, I'll just refer to 2 or 3 debates which are currently going on in the country, and every day we are there in the TV shows doing that. Part of India was being directly governed by British, which was known as British India, and then there were other principalities. You had Nizams, as you had in Hyderabad, you had Rajas, you had Maharajas, you had everybody called himself by his own name. So there were over 500. Now the question was that you had to evolve a strategy to bring them all under the domain of a single Indian Republic. So how do you go about? So it was decided, with Sardar Patel being the torchbearer of this idea, that the British directly ruled part of India will by and large be determined by the composition of the population. So part of Punjab, which was having majority of Muslims like Lahore etc., went to Pakistan. Amritsar came to India. Likewise, Bengal got divided. Many of you may not be aware that Panditji had suggested to Gandhiji much earlier in 1944 that entire Bengal should go over to Pakistan. And it was Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. I call Shyama Prasad Mukherjee as the first angry young man of India. Many years before Amitabh Bachchan came on the screen, because Shyama Prasad passed away at the age of 52, and when he was doing all these things, it's unfortunate. I think this is a tragedy of this nation, that we have deliberately avoided educating our children about what Shyama Prasad was. A person who in his 20s becomes one of the leading lawyers without any patronage or family lineage. By the age of 35, he is appointed Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, and you had only 3 universities at that time in India set up by the British wherever they had presidencies. You had Calcutta University, you had Madras University, you had Bombay. And none other than a Britisher would be there. And having been appointed Vice Chancellor, this young man quits his job to follow this crusade. And then, makes visionary observations. We have failed to honor his legacy. Anyway, so what I just went astray to tell you that this was going to happen even at that time. So, now as far as the principalities was concerned, it was decided that each of these princes would be given an option to decide which way to go, India or Pakistan. It was not referendum. Repeatedly this thing is coming up, isn't it, in the media. The other day Yasin Malik was asking me about referendum. I'll give you an answer for that also. On the Times Now show he was talking. So I rebuffed him. I'll explain to you. The discretion was with the Raja or the Nizam. Now some of them went this way, some of them went that way. Okay. Now as far as the state of Jammu and Kashmir was concerned, there was some delay because Maharaja Hari Singh, the then prince, was already, intrigued by the kind of conspiracy that was being hatched, which he perceived by Nehruji and Sheikh Abdullah. Because Sheikh Abdullah had started a movement called Quit Kashmir movement way back, much before 1940. Now this Quit Kashmir movement, again, please note these things because they'll come handy when you argue. This was not Quit Jammu and Kashmir. It was also not that Quit India which came into being in 1942. The declaration of which was made from Azad Maidan in Bombay, now known as Mumbai, by Arun Asif Ali. Quit Kashmir was against the Hindu rule. He wanted Maharaja Hari Singh to quit so that the Kashmiri Muslims should not be subordinate to his rule. Anyway, now Nehru, around the same time, the World War has ended. I mean, these are things not written, not said, not discussed. You have to have research mind to, please go into this. In the post-war era, Nehru was emerging larger than size, emerging like a world leader. And he also had that potential, and he believed that he could be so, and rightly so. We don't dispute him for that, along with Nasser and other things. So he thought that Sheikh Abdullah was an instrument which could carry forward his agenda of democracy, apostle of democracy, apostle of peace, as Nehruji, started looking at himself. At one time he even said that we disband all the army because there are not going to be any wars anymore. He went to that extent. So he started patronizing Sheikh Abdullah, prompting him. And gradually this Quit Kashmir got converted into Quit Jammu and Kashmir without the nomenclature. And the movement became against Maharaja. So that is why Maharaja was taking time. Now meanwhile, Pakistan sent in its infiltrators. There was an attack. Maharaja, as a true patriot and a nationalist, wanted to save his subjects and had no other option but to approach the government of India. And the government of India and the Lord Mountbatten that time had produced that letter of accession. He had to sign that. Now that about closes that chapter of accession. And later on, he was also pressurized to appoint Sheikh Abdullah as the head of the emergency government. Maharaja's role ends there. As a respectable citizen, a respectable Sanatani Hindu, he left Jammu never to come back and died in Mumbai in 1962. That chapter is closed. Now you say it was accession, not merger. This debate is currently going on, and Umar Abdullah is on the forefront of this. You can refute this at 3 levels. When I did that, Umar Abdullah and his father took it as personal. You can refute it at the level of literature, at the level of constitutional and geographical, and at the level of political facts. Literally, the word Merger means vilay in Hindi. So when you annex, the part annexed becomes automatically merged. Okay? If you have a house and the adjoining plot is owned by somebody else, he hands over that plot of land with you. He says, I annex this adjacent land to Rahul Razdan. So by implication, that part of land has merged with Rahul's land. To say it is not so is like saying that Lakshmi Devi is married to Srinivasan, but I am not sure whether she is his wife. You are raising mischievous questions, and this is also mischief. So that is literature part. I said that to Umar Abdullah because he is very fond of tweeting odd quotes which he read in high school. We have burnt our head all through reading literature. So that is one part. Now come down to the geographical and the constitutional part. There was a document called merger document at the time of independence, which probably he is trying to seek a resort. That document applied in different situations. I'll explain to you how, because many of us have not understood that. Like for example, it was decided that the states would be constituted on linguistic pattern, and rightly so. Patel was right, because otherwise there would not be any end, because Britishers had made it by convenience. United Provinces, Bengal, Mumbai, Bombay was one, Madras, the entire, all these three states. So they thought, if we go by religion and other things, let's have this pattern. And that's how Andhra Pradesh came into being, where we are standing today. You didn't have a state of Andhra Pradesh before 1947, it came into being after that. Now once you decide that this Telugu speaking land or majority land becomes a state kind of Andhra Pradesh, okay, the question is, what happens to Hyderabad? Hyderabad was not under British. It is a separately ruled, independent ruled by Nizam. So where does it go? So then you ask Nizam, you suggest to him that you merge with Andhra Pradesh. So that's something different. It's not annexing, it's merging. You go up north. You had Punjab, Amritsar, Lahore was with British, but then you also had Kapurthala under a prince. You had Patiala. The grandfather of present Captain Amrinder Singh, the former Chief Minister of Punjab, was the ruler. So what do you do with these small states? You cannot have Hyderabad as a state or Patiala as a state. Again you will end up being 500 states. So merger was meant for them. And thirdly, we must also, as I said, carry the discourse to their doorstep and ask a Chief Minister who is supposed to be the custodian of the Constitution under the oath of which he is supposed to function. Does he enjoy the prerogative to question the validity of same Constitution? Does he enjoy that propriety? And if he is genuinely convinced about what he is saying, then propriety demands that he should first tender his resignation. Like, again, Shyama Prasad ji did. He was Industry Minister in the interim government with Jawaharlal Nehru. Around 1950, he said that repeatedly, my mind thinks otherwise. I think it's not proper for me to sit in this council. So this is how. Now, this will go on and on. I'll just talk about the three Nehruvian points and go over to the report as such, because otherwise we'll talk for the whole day. So we'll talk only about the report. So about the three blunders which carry on till this day and which give the opportunity to some people to call this issue an issue which we don't believe is an issue. A, this bringing in of Article 370, as Rahul also pointed out. It was not required. Once it becomes a state of India, like any other state, there's no reason why you should have anything other tagged onto it. It was an unnecessary tag as you remove from your Facebook. It could have been removed. And again, it was Shyama Prasad who said in the Constituent Assembly that, Panditji, I am not totally convinced about it, and if you... But he said, Panditji said, no, Shyama, you don't know Kashmir so well. The people of Kashmir will take some time till their minds and hearts come in. So let's have it. So he said, then Mukherjee said, then Panditji, can you put some rider on this time bound? He said, no, time bound not required. Shyama, don't be upset. This is the exact words he said. He said, Shyama Prasad, don't be upset. ये धारा घिसते घिसते घिस जाएगी. धारा 370 घिसते घिसते घिस जाएगी. Nehru ji also used to speak Allahabadi Urdu. So there's no need of time, but it'll go before that. So that was failure of Nehru's vision. Nehru might have also realized that, because in 1961 he's on record having said that I personally believe that Article 370 is no longer required, but he just lived about 3 years after that. And Gulzari Lal Nanda in 1964, who was the Home Minister then and has been acting Prime Minister twice. We have some of, confirmed acting Prime Ministers. But all of them are not fortunate like Pranab Da to become President. Pranab Da was also one of the repeatedly becoming acting Prime Minister. So was Gulzari Lal Nanda ji. He also subscribed to same view. But by that time, so much of vested interest had grown around Article 370 that it has become difficult to undo it. Pandit ji also might have seen it beyond, and that time he was also ailing. After 1962 war, he was quite frail and hardly he was devoid of any initiative. So, and over the period of time, there's so much of vested interest by the bureaucrats, by the politicians, by the militants, also by the foreign agencies, that's becoming increasing to the extent that now one of our interlocutors report says that it has to be made permanent. The second mistake which Nehru ji, in spite of being a visionary, could have avoided is carrying the issue to UNO in early 1948. As I said, he was at that time trying to project himself as an absolute liberal democrat world leader, and maybe he was also confident that with Sheikh Abdullah there, the referendum will be in his favor. Now, here, this question will be put to you, because we are all carrying out this campaign, and as I said, we have to be scientific in our argument. We can't say Nehru made a mistake. Said, okay, he made a mistake, but he was your grandfather. He was the Prime Minister of India. What he's done is on record. You cannot deny that. If I say my father produced an illegitimate child, so, but I can't deny that. Even ND Tiwari can't deny that. They go in for a gene test. So it's on record. So, then how to refute it? Yes. You have, Nehru of course made a mistake, because UNO meant for, it was inter-country dispute, it was not meant for intra-country. But now, it is on record. It's not Nehru, it's the government of that time which went there, under the prime ministership of a particular person. And Krishna Menon represented us, who was the minister that time, delivered a speech for 14 hours, made a record. And I did a write-up. I said Krishna Menon spoke for 14 hours about Kashmir to an audience who did not know where is Kashmir. So this is all on record. So you have to refute it. Now, how do you refute it? Nature has come to your rescue. The UNO resolution said that there could be a referendum if Pakistan withdrew from its territory. Now, once Pakistan having failed to withdraw, this becomes null and void. And this is exactly what provoked Yasin Malik on that TV show, and he started abusing me. And then I said, now, under the present circumstances, which referendum are you talking about? The total state of Jammu and Kashmir, please get your figures clear, and we have to fight it out scientifically in the next few years. The total state of Jammu and Kashmir comprises an area of 2,22,000. I'm giving just the round figures. Out of that, almost 1,12,000 square kilometer is under the occupation of Pakistan and China, out of which Gilgit-Baltistan also comprises about 78 square kilometer. Then you have POK. Then you have about 5,000 square kilometer which Pakistan has given already to China, the Karakoram Pass and all. So what you are left with is less than 50% of the erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir. Now, out of this 1 lakh, around 1 lakh square kilometer which is there with India, the Kashmir Valley comprises 15 to 16 square kilometer, the Jammu region about 25 to 26 thousand square kilometer, and Ladakh, the largest, about 50 to 60,000 square kilometer. So I asked Yasin Malik, so you mean referendum in Kashmir Valley, which is just 15% of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, of the state of the Jammu and Kashmir under India. So what is that referendum? It's scientifically becomes null and void. So this is the argument. And the third mistake which I don't know why, because that time there was an exchange of population. The greatest ever exchange of populations took place in 1947 at the time of partition. Muslims were going that side, Hindus were coming this side. Some great actors went that side. Noor Jahan went that side. Mehdi Hasan went that side. You know, somebody suggested to Yusuf Khan also, you go that side. But he thought, no, I will get good films here. I will better stay back. Otherwise, no, you won't get a Bimal Roy to make Devdas. So, those who could not compete went that side. Noor Jahan could not compete with Lata Mangeshkar. Mehdi Hasan thought, Rafi is there, let me go. So, people were weighing their pros and cons. No, I am giving you the hard facts. Please apply your mind. It's not why all the Muslims didn't go to Pakistan. That is the question. When you had a two-nation theory, those who thought who would not compete enough or in their sphere and they could rule there, because Noor Jahan found that she was sliding down with the coming in of Lata Mangeshkar. Anyway, that we can talk sometime later. We can have a full day session on the cinema also. We have thoroughly worked on all these things. Now, what I am saying is that in this melee, we had refugees coming from West Pakistan. By that time, Sardar Patel had died. Unfortunately, he lived only 2-3 years. He died in 1950. Govind Ballabh Pant had taken over. And he was a little pliable also. Nehruji also suggested, and he agreed, that these refugees coming from West Pakistan should not be encouraged to settle in Jammu Kashmir. Why? Because according to Nehruji, Jammu Kashmir is still a disputed territory. We have to get back Pak occupied Kashmir, and these West Pakistan refugees should go elsewhere. They went elsewhere. They went to Delhi. And those who went to Delhi made it big. Jagmohan is one of them. R.K. Dhawan is other one. We had two prime ministers, Inder Kumar Gujral and the present Prime Minister Manmohan Singh from Jhelum district of West Pakistan. We had our own Shri Lal Krishna Advani ji from Karachi. So about 1.5 to 2 lakh people, even in spite of this decision, chose to settle in Jammu Kashmir. And now you have a unique situation which is never seen in the history of the world, that this population, which is now, going through its third generation, has been living in free India for the last 65 years and doesn't have the voting rights. It cannot vote for the assembly. So these are the things you have to highlight. Has it ever been heard of, seen of? Because they are not considered the domiciles of Jammu and Kashmir. See the paradox. These are certain universal arguments which can break this jinx. If you just say, no, we don't agree. You say, no, okay, don't agree. Your father produced my mother's son and I have a gene test. So what is the answer? You have to have an argument which goes the other way. Now, as far as the interlocutor's report is concerned, because otherwise we'll keep talking about various issues, and I don't want to take long, because our main focus is interlocutor. That is also the assignment given to me by the party leadership. See, as I said in the beginning, we have always believed that we don't wish to have any kind of interlocution on this. We don't consider it as a dispute. The report, the group was constituted. I'll just give you a small background as far as we, the party, are concerned. In October 2010, Dilip Padgaonkar ji was also personally known to me quite well. He's been kind enough to publish our write-ups when he was editor with the Times of India. We thought he was a more accommodating editor than many others. But personally, I feel he was a better man before he became an interlocutor. As George Bernard Shaw once said about Churchill, I knew Churchill for many years. He was a better man then, when he was not a prime minister. So the problem here is that if you are in journalism, then you are also, moving with politicians. Sometimes you get to know a certain powerful minister quite well. You also tend ambitions. And this interlocutor business is a very, very lucrative business. Because the government, if you are close to government, it's also a sort of a Gaushala, rehabilitation center for the retired bureaucrats or retired academicians or journalists who are close to the powers that be. And once you become an interlocutor, it's like your corporate thing. Then you become, for a hike, qualified for a hike, qualified for a bigger company. Here, you become qualified to become a governor. That is the misfortune. Tomorrow you may have Mr. Padgaonkar as a governor, irrespective of what Rahul is crying about, because he's already got his credentials good. And I'm again saying this, not without evidence. The present governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Mr. M.M. Vohra, retired as Defence Secretary of India, was close to Mr. Narasimha Rao and the Sonia Gandhi clan, was appointed interlocutor in Jammu and Kashmir and is today the governor. So this is the right path as far as the interlocutors are concerned. After their appointment, they started visiting state of Jammu and Kashmir. They deliberately avoided meeting us each time. He was making occasional calls to me on personal level. But I said we have to be official as far as this interlocution business is concerned, because tomorrow we'll have to take a position on that. So the first time when he formally met us was when he arrived in our office. That was 16th of January 2010. Mr. Padgaonkar apologized. He said, I'm sorry I could not get in touch with you earlier. I am a nationalist. After all, I am an Indian. You have certain misgivings about me. So we gave him a charter of our priorities, which he carried back, and he said he will get back to us in 15 days. But none of them got back to us in 15 days. Meanwhile, each time they were holding press conferences and saying, we can discuss autonomy, we can strategize. We raised this issue even then with Chidambaram. We had a number of press conferences. We were the first to, because in fact, we were restrained by our own party, some of leaders, that go slow till the results come out. I said he is exceeding his brief. His brief is to find out facts. He is being judgmental. He's gone to study the topography of this place, Barkatpura, and before stepping in, he says the name of Barkatpura should be changed. So, anyway, then they had 3 roundtable conferences. They invited me and Mr. Sushant, Rajan Sushant, the member parliament from Himachal for that, and from Congress they had Mani Shankar Iyer. So, there's more of this stage managed thing going on. We were always apprehensive, we kept on pointing. Then, about 8 months back, Mr. Padgaonkar calls up and tells me that I have spoken to other leaders also, and please restrain, don't take a position, because I have written all that you wanted to be written. And soon after that, we were also told by one of our senior most persons in Delhi that you go slow. We have a reason to believe that. But then, after all that, to cut a long story short, on the 24th of May, when we were holding the National Executive meeting in Mumbai, sometime around 11 o'clock, this report makes public. And this, immediately Mr. Arun Jaitley called for me, asked me to prepare a note which I submitted to him, and he then gave 6 points. We took up a resolution which was presented by Mr. Jaitley at 4 o'clock. So within 3 hours, we were the first to react officially. I'll read out to you the 6 points which we have officially taken up as our position. And before that, some of the misconceptions which have motivated the writing of this report and writing of certain facts which Rahul was also referring to, and Professor Sridhar too. I don't believe that they are misconceptions. And I told Mr. Padgaonkar that some of my friends say that you have written it out of ignorance. And I consider this as an insult to your intelligence. You are too intelligent to write anything out of ignorance. So, since you are also a journalist and me too, can I put it other way? It is not ill-conceived beliefs, it is mischievously conceived beliefs. And basically, this is not by default, it is by design. And they have already had certain preconceived notions, ideas on the basis of which this was formulated. Our first and foremost, because soon after the resolution was adopted and we were, my senior colleague, my senior spokesperson, Madam Nirmala Sitharamanji and me, we were assigned by the party to release it to the press and hold a press conference. The first thing I said there is that, which is of course not the point of contradicting the resolution, the first thing is the issue of propriety. Please remember and please note something which is not been noticed by many of us, this report was made public just 36 hours after the Parliament was adjourned sine die, whereas the report was lying in the Home Ministry for the last 7 months. So if the government was sincere about it, if the government truly believed in the supremacy of the parliamentary functioning, it would have been in the fitness of things to bring it out. So that means maybe the Home Minister himself was shy of subjecting it to an open debate, and he just safely put it on the side. The various misconceptions, or as I said, mischievously conceived inceptions, and when I talk about what we have written, Mr. Padgaonkar writes that Article 370 is conditional. We have nothing in the Constitution of India or even the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, which became applicable in the year 1956, to suggest that Article 370 is conditional. On the one hand, of course, we are opposed to Article 370. We have fought for the abrogation of Article 370. That is one aspect. But there is nothing to suggest that it is conditional. On the other hand, it was temporary. And these persons have made it permanent. Then he says the Kashmir dispute, Kashmir is a dispute between India and Pakistan. Again, I have already elaborated a couple of minutes earlier about accession. So if you go there, there is no dispute, and particularly so after 1994 resolution. So they are legitimizing, they are opening a closed chapter. And what we have not written, but I have otherwise written in the press, in the form of write-ups that has been circulated across. This also amounts to violation of the code of conduct by these three interlocutors. Please remember, they are government-appointed interlocutors. They were not appointed by Citizens of Democracy or Sudhakar Rao. They were appointed by the government. They were on the payroll. They were getting honorarium, 50,000 each, plus perks, privileges, to the extent of being enjoyed by a minister of state. And a government appointed interlocutor is almost like a government functionary, is supposed to work within the framework of constitution and is raising certain things. They are liable to be booked under vigilance law also. And the normal course, you could have sent a notice for violation of the code of conduct. Third, they say the Kashmiriyat has to be addressed. Now, see, to be a fair interlocutor, this part could have been avoided. Because if you today say Kashmiriyat, then Jammu wala will say Dogriyat, Ladakh wala will say he also needs something, because that Boti language, which is the spoken language, is waiting to be included in 8th schedule. So why particularly Kashmiriyat, which is just a part of valley? You have Gilgit-Baltistan, you have Shia Muslims being killed in dozens, the gross violation of human rights. So that is one part. Again, you are addressing only 15%. Now, even after addressing 15%, you can, if the argument could be, what then? What is the harm? Maybe they are more aggrieved, they have faced more militancy. So that is why we said. Now, what is your counter argument? Your counter argument will say, then what about Rahul Rajdhan? Kashmiriyat, the essence is the presence of Kashmiri Pandit. So can you visualize Kashmiriyat in the absence of Hindu? Because Kashmiriyat defines the unique composite culture of Kashmir, where Muslims sing Shiva hymns and Hindus also, follow certain cultural dresses and other things like Muslim. That unique thing is Kashmiriyat. If you have segregated, how are you talking about Kashmir? So the precondition is that you have to carry back the Kashmiri Pandit there, so that he can nourish that Kashmiriyat. When I made, soon after migration, a presentation before WHO that was in Sri Lanka on the rising upsurge of diabetes among Kashmiri Pandits. So there was question, because not many people, Kashmiri Pandits became famous after migration. Rahul, that is one advantage, side effect of love. You become famous. Yeah, you are right. Very few people who knew about this community. So there were questions. So somebody asked me, what is the difference between this Brahmin and that Brahmin? There are only Brahmins. Why? So I said, no, in India, heterogeneous nation, every Brahmin is also not same. Iyengar Brahmin of Tamil Nadu or a Tripathi Brahmin of Uttar Pradesh is different, and Kashmiri Pandit Brahmin or Kashmiri Brahmin is different. So he said it precisely gives us the difference. I said the precise difference is that Iyengar Brahmin will not marry a bride or a husband who is non-vegetarian, whereas a Kashmiri Brahmin is a fish-eater Brahmin. So there itself is, so that is composite. That is composite. That is, so that part is refuted. Then you say that since it is a Muslim majority state, it has to be given some sort of consideration. Now your argument should be, we have already refuted and rejected the theory of two nations, but are we going to now revive that theory within the country? Now if that is the case, tomorrow Punjab, Sikhs will say, this is a Sikh majority state, we need to have our kind of thing. Or, I was telling yesterday in Bangalore, Yedurappa can build up a case. He says, I am a Lingayat majority state, I am a Lingayat majority leader, so I should be the Prime Minister, the Chief Minister. So are you going to promote this on the basis of religion? Then he says, it's a unique problem. Now he has, being a highly brilliant journalist, pilfered this phrase from Chidambaram, because Chidambaram said, Kashmir is a unique problem. I did a write-up, I said, Chidambaram said it's a unique problem, and thereby appointed a unique set of interlocutors who have come out with a unique report. Then the report says, Parliament of India has no jurisdiction over Jammu and Kashmir. You refute that. There is nothing, nowhere written, neither in the Constitution of India nor in the Constitution of State. On the contrary, the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution, Section 3 and 5, please refer, because I said our discourse will be scientific, our discourse will be academic, we will carry it to their doorstep. Section 3 says that Jammu Kashmir is an integral part of India, and though amendments can be taken up by the popularly elected assembly or parliament, but no bill or amendment will be taken up with regard to Section 3 and 5. So what is Section 3? Section 3 says it's integral part. That means this section is never to be debated in the parliament or in the state assembly. And Section 5 says that the Parliament of India will have jurisdiction over Jammu and Kashmir. So this is part of our constitution. So the report also is not only unconstitutional, it is a violation of constitution by the state appointed functionaries, and this is being misused. Now the problem here is that report has been written, it has been published, it's become a reference point. Okay, we don't agree with it, but for the future times it's become a document. So a document has to be refuted by a document. That's why we are encouraging writings, and we are soon going to come up with a vision document. In fact, this morning itself I received a call from Shri Rainath Singh ji, who is heading this study group on Jammu and Kashmir, and he was very anxious. He said, what are you doing in Hyderabad? Come back and write that vision document. So I said, sir, I'll be back soon, we'll do that. So a group has been comprised. Because what happens is, once a marriage is solemnized, you can say Rajesh Khanna and Dimple Kapadia never went along well. Okay, but when he has cirrhosis, he's in the hospital, the wife is Dimple only, no? That time Tina will not come. No, just tell me. She may have suffered all her life. He may have 100 other women. But when the old man is on the deathbed, the wife has to come. Because the document is there. No, I'm talking to you in your language, you refute this. Now you have a document which has raised all these questions. You have to refute it. If it was not a document, then as I said in the party meetings also, in day before we were in Delhi, I said, as far as I am personally concerned, I will not even like to give any argument for this report, because I am so much in awe of what Shyama Prasad ji did. And because some of our party men said, he said, you read it carefully, there are certain good things also. Some senior person said. I said, a report which is written on the dead body of Shama Prasad. Shama Prasad ji laid down his life for Ek Vidhan, Ek Nishan, Ek Pradhan. And this report revives that. So once I come across this line, I need not go beyond that. But that is again personal. Tomorrow they will say, oh, Doctor, this is reactionary, emotional, sentimental, like Hindu Parishad. Barkha Dutt said, you are Hindu Parishad. That debate. So, without getting that label, we have to have a scientific argument. So, what is the scientific argument? Officially, we have made 6 points. We have put it on record. And if the Parliament brings in this vote, it will be placed there also. Number 1, in the last 20 years, the basic issue in Jammu and Kashmir is terrorism. Dispute and all, we don't believe. The report has not addressed that issue. The entire, this melee has originated because of terrorism which began in the late 90s and 1980s. Why? What was the genesis of terrorism? How terrorism could have been tackled better? Who is fanning this terrorism? Why this terrorism is not coming to the kind of culmination that it should have? That should have been the main plan. So this is our official number 1. This is the 6 points which we have highlighted at the national level, and we have put it officially on record. This is also part of our officially adopted resolution of 24th May. It is again because of terrorism that Dilip Padgaonkar was appointed interlocutor. He owes his job to terrorism. If Jammu Kashmir did not have terrorism, Dilip Padgaonkar would not have been appointed as interlocutor. So he should be indebted, and he owed it. So that is first. The second is that the issue of the report has referred to Pak occupied Kashmir as Pak administered Jammu Kashmir. Our second point. 1994, Congress government brings in a resolution and every party supports it. And POK is an officially acknowledged, recorded, constitutionally valid. Now these government appointed interlocutors are giving it a nomenclature which is unconstitutional. Now this nomenclature was first raked up by Padgaonkar ji and some of his friends, Mr. Ved Singh, and there was some other group of that human rights lobby in 90s. And that time also we objected. We said you are giving a clue to Hurriyats. They said Pak administered Kashmir. Now they have gone one step further to legitimize it. Now see the mischief between the line. If the part of Jammu and Kashmir under Pakistan is Pak administered Jammu Kashmir, then the part of Jammu and Kashmir under India is India administered Jammu Kashmir. They have not written, but this goes without writing. See, that is why I said Padgaonkar ji is too intelligent to write out of ignorance. He has left many things unwritten, but which will be used against you. So, if Pak administered Jammu Kashmir is with Pakistan and India administered Jammu Kashmir is with India, that means that the dispute is alive. You have legitimized the dispute. You have even questioned the right and the supremacy of the Republic of India over the part of Jammu and Kashmir under its control. And you have also, that is what the exact words I told to Mr. M.M. Ansari in the debate in Mumbai, one of the interlocutors. I said, you have outraged the sanctity of the Parliament of India. We have rather, so that is our second point. Our third point, the report fails to address the issue of Kashmiri Pandits and other minorities of the valley like Sikhs. It says they should go back. There is nothing wrong in saying that. Our stand, consistent for the last 20-25 years, is that you create conditions which are conducive, which will attract not only the Kashmiri Pandits but even other communities of India to come and settle there. And if that situation arises, the Kashmiri Pandit will not have to be persuaded or given a package to go there. This report simply says they should go back. Hyderabad partly also speaks Urdu. So Mirza Ghalib says, चाहिए अच्छों को जितना चाहिए
ये अगर चाहें तो फिर क्या चाहिए. So it's very nice saying, oh, likable person, beautiful woman, must like her. But what matters is whether she likes you. So who is going to be the gunny bear? So this is third point. Number 4, Article 370. As I have already spoken at length, we believe, and for that, because when you speak about article, we have tried to carry this discussion into the fold of the Kashmiri Muslim youth. It has created a psychological barrier more than a physical barrier. At the moment you talk about this, oh, these people have come from the Sangh, from this, from BJP. We have been for the last 1.5 years saying that we are ready for an open debate on Article 370. People from all hues, all ideologies, all backgrounds. We will give you figures to prove that it has done more harm to the Kashmiri Muslim itself. Rahul has come out and got a job here. The Kashmiri youth has suffered from that point of view. So we have to explain it that way also. It has discouraged investment from outside. It has prevented job creation within the valley. And we not only stand for the abrogation of the article, we also believe that anything that even psychologically gives an impression that we are separate has to be discouraged. We have not to legitimize separatism. Our fifth point, 1953. He says, not feasible to go back, but you could have a committee to review it. Now your argument should be, and again you can carry it to the doorstep of the Kashmiri Muslim youth and explain to him, in the name of this 53, the most exploited person is the Kashmiri Muslim. And I'll tell you why. This 53 thing was accepted by none other than Sheikh Abdullah. 1952 in Constituent Assembly, he also accepts that it's integral part. After that, Sheikh Abdullah goes to prison for 22 years. That prison was as good as a guest house because he was placed in Ooty, the best of the most scenic place. And then these provisions started coming in. What were those provisions? Like election commission, jurisdiction. All along, Kashmiri Muslim leaders and the separatist leadership has been complaining that you have had puppet regimes. You have proxy chief ministers. Morarji Desai was the only prime minister who held the first ever fair election. That is what they say. This is a popular discourse there. But how did that happen? Because it was the jurisdiction of the Election Commission of India which had been extended. Okay. The Supreme Court of India. Justice came to the common man in the valley through the medium of Supreme Court. And what is happening today? You read the newspapers. The panchis and sarpanchis are out in the streets, not in Jammu and Ladakh, but in Kashmir Valley. Sudhakar ji will endorse in Anantnag, Baramulla, Muslim sarpanchis. They are saying you implement the amendment 73 and 74 of the Local Bodies Act. This also I told Ansari ji, one of the interlocutors. I said the people, the Muslims of Kashmir are asking for those provisions which are not already applicable. And you are asking for review of provisions which are applicable. Because most of these provisions are in their interest. It's just a political bogey. Why? Because once the 73-74 amendment is, that's again a lesser known fact. The entire central grant, which amounts to crores of rupees, 300, 400 crore, after every municipal election, goes straight to these representatives. So if you don't implement that amendment in toto, you see, because this amendment was brought in Rajiv Gandhi's time and different states have differently adopted it. If you don't adopt it in toto, then that grant comes through the Panchayat Minister or Urban Rural Development Minister of that state. And there is a leverage, a room for manipulation at the levels. And that is now being realized by these panchis and panchis. Secondly, when Sheikh Abdullah came back to power in 1975, that was also one of the mistakes which Indira ji committed, because she didn't know that she is not going to last long and she thought she would be able to manage things, but within 5 years she was no more. So she thought that nothing would happen. And she thought maybe, because that time, you know, she was very mighty after the Bangladesh war. She was unsurmountable. So she thought, I'll settle this part also, bring out Sheikh Abdullah and rehabilitate him, so that that will give me some credit also. The so-called Sher-e-Kashmir. Once, but she could not see the chicanery behind as Nehru did. Once, just beside the point, Sheikh Abdullah happened to walk into the chamber of Sardar Patel when he was Home Minister. And somebody stopped him, and Sheikh Abdullah told his secretary, tell him I am known as Sher-e-Kashmir. And Sardar Patel said, the sher or the lion should live either in jungle or in cage, not in Home Minister's chamber. So I don't get bored down. Anyway, like Yasin Melk said in the show that I'll walk out. Then Arnab said you can walk out, but before that you answer the question which Dr. Singh has put. So what I'm trying to say is, when he came back to power, he meekly, very meekly told Indira ji, Madam, when I was there last time, I was known as Prime Minister. So Indira Gandhi said, Sheikh Sahab, and these were her words, the hands of clock do not go back. She was a very curt lady. I said, I am doing something good for you. Go ahead, don't try to. Sheikh went back. For 4 or 5 days, he did not respond. He was thinking. Then he spoke to his friends. They told him, this lady is very dangerous. She turned out her husband. Firoz was living in a parliament member's quarter. If he is bringing you back, come back. And Sheikh meekly came back. Thereafter, for face saving, what he does, he constitutes a cabinet committee under his finance minister called Mr. Devidas Thakur. The committee has gone down on record. These are arguments on record we can put forward. And you can tell the Kashmiri Muslim that this, in the name of 53 and autonomy, the people who are using this are in fact cheating the Kashmiri Muslim. He forms a committee under his minister. That time there were about 100 provisions of the Indian Constitution which were applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. That was the year 1975. The committee, which was state managed, comes out with a report that all these provisions are in the interest of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So the Sheikh Abdullah himself saying, his grandson saying different. Why? Because, as I always have written, freedom, separatism in Kashmir is not ideology. It is not to be compared with Mahatma Gandhi's struggle. It's more of a political weapon. There are at least 3 chief ministers. When in power they say Jammu Kashmir integral part of India. When outside the power they say it's a disputed. Sheikh Abdullah himself was one, as I am saying, 75 came back. The other was Farooq Abdullah, who in 1989 to the governor rules were imposed said the youth should go across and get training in arms. And third was G.M. Shah, the son-in-law, immediately after ousted from some party, you know, pro-Azadi party. And now Umar Abdullah, because he is finding himself cornered by another Kashmir-centric party called People's Democratic Party. And in fact, months before the 2008 agitation of Amarnath Yatra, he said, we are foreseeing, I wrote that, a very dangerous situation erupting, because there's a very dangerous race between the National Conference and the PDP, because the election was just 6 months away. So this is more of a political. Even you have a clerk in your office, you dismiss him, sir, or you make an explanation call. He'll go outside, stand outside and say, Pakistan Zindabad, Azadi Zindabad. The easiest way to browbeat you in Kashmir. So this is what has happened. Sheikh Abdullah, so you tell them, the persons whose demand, the demand for pre-53 has not come from the Kashmir masses, it's not come from the Kashmir Muslim community, not the Hindus at all. It has just come from one single party, the National Conference, whose forefather, this established father himself, has accepted it. And this is again out of political experience. And our 6th point about the appointment of the governor and the nomenclature. The report says the governor will be appointed out of a panel of 3 persons suggested by the assembly. Sudhakar ji, I'll just take 2 minutes more. The 6th point, say, the report says the governor will be appointed out of the 3 persons. Now we say, this is going to set up a very dangerous precedent. The President of India is a post like the governor in the state, which was inspired by the monarchy in the United Kingdom and the founding fathers led by B.R. Ambedkar, the Constituent Assembly, which also considered Shyama Prasad ji, Nehru and others, decided that we will have a democratic replica of monarch. We cannot have King George or Queen Elizabeth, and therefore we would have somebody like Babu Rajendra Prasad, and same way we would have a governor. Now, if you give the assembly the option to give a panel of 3 names, then what will happen? Because this is what was discussed in the party, and they said, no doctor, this is nothing, not very dangerous. I told them what will happen if you implement in next 10 years. Next 10 years, just as your legislative council has become a Gaushala, Raj Bhavan will become a Gaushala. I am not comfortable with Sudhakar Rao ji because I want to become chief minister. He is also a candidate. I will say, Sudhakar ji, why not I propose your name for governor? I will kick you up. You will be above me. Tomorrow, there is a dispute going on between Gowda and Yediyurappa. Gowda will say, let's have a compromise. From the assembly, I will pass your panel. You become governor of Karnataka. We cannot take these things so lightly. This is going to have a country-wide ramification. And about the nomenclature. Again, the report says, very mischievously, that the nomenclature of chief minister and governor could be changed over to Urdu. Again, the question was put to us within the party that you could leave aside this because this is very innocent statement that it could be changed to Urdu because it's a Urdu speaking state. But again, there's a mischief, as I said in the governor's thing. And we did some study about it, and I was able to, thank God, convince the rest of the friends. In Urdu language, the translation for chief minister is Wazir-e-Ala. If you listen to Radio Pakistan News, listen to Pakistan television. But there is no precise translation for governor. If you read, if you are a occasional or a regular listener to the Radio Pakistan, they would say, Baloch ke Wazir-e-Ala, a Punjab ke governor. They use the word governor even in their Urdu bulletins. We have a word called Rajyapal. For the president, the word is Sadr. Now, by implication, these interlocutors are saying that you change it to Sadr-e-Riyasat, the Sadr of the state, which becomes president of the state. So again, that you are again hitting the soul of Shyama Prasad. You are going to have 2 presidents. How can you have a president in a state when you have a president sitting in Raisana Hills, when Pratibha Patil is still not given up her job? So these were the 6 main points, and 4-5 points which we have not officially passed and officially taken up, but just to keep in your mind, because this we will be talking about it, is one about that they have not given enough attention to the issue of Gilgit-Baltistan. And please always keep in mind that it is again we can argue on this, that the Pakistan constitution itself describes Gilgit-Baltistan as a part of erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir. It doesn't call it, it calls Muzaffarabad and this part of Kashmir as POK, but not Gilgit. So we have a point to fight over there. And China is coming in from that side. General Kiani was in Beijing in January, and there was a rumor that Pakistan could lease out Baltistan. And please remember, not only it will be strategically difficult for India, but also business wise, because China has now strategically army wise taken over. You know, he is now quite a match to US and others. Is now taking over your industry. You have all fake Chinese things. You have Chinese mobile, you have Chinese torch, you have Chinese men and Chinese women, all fake. And now what is required is power to run these fake things, fake men, fake women. How would you run? If it gets that Gilgit-Baltistan, it has boundary sharing with Afghanistan, Russia, and Afghanistan has rich gas resources. So China does not do things without a thought. Many of you may not be remembering when Mao Zedong died, it was a big wicket falling. Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad ji was here, president. He started discussing who should go. I should go, vice president should go, home minister should go. After all, Mao Zedong, big man. So everybody started packing baggage, because there were used to be very few trips into China those days. China would not allow foreign dignitaries. Now they have started allowing. Nobody had, and Mao Zedong all his life never went out of China but kept the entire world in his control. So when they started packing their baggage, an announcement was made by Foreign Ministry in Beijing that all those who condole the death of Chairman Mao Zedong are requested to go to the embassies in their respective capitals and write a note. So China is too clever for us, because they said, this, we don't want to have a fun fair here. We never allow any foreigners here. This way they will have an excuse to visit Beijing and we will be spending crores on their hospitality. So if that comes, it will also be our business. So that is one point. The other is about, they have not also addressed the issue of scheduled castes. Scheduled tribe section is still not applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. That issue is pending. A very dangerous suggestion has been made that you have a dialogue with Hurriyat. Now they are legitimizing separatism. So they say you have a dialogue with Hurriyat, they have a dialogue with Pakistan, and then after all that, what emerges from that dialogue, you go to parliament. We are saying there is no dispute. We are saying whatever is there is internal matter. And they are suggesting that you involve a foreign power, you involve somebody at another party. Like, I am saying this is a dispute between me and my wife. My ex-wife is already divorced. He is suggesting me, no, you talk to your ex-wife also for some time. Then you also talk to your neighbor, what he thinks about your ex-wife and present. And then the entire panchayat will think how you have to deal. If we encourage this will go on encouraging this kind of intellectual terrorism, because you see, intellectual terrorism has done more harm to this country. Why? Again, there is evidence. If you have a terrorist militant coming in, you have these x-rays, his revolver starts speaking, he is held out. But intellectual terrorism cannot be held, because the brain doesn't give a signal. He walks in and he starts pouring venom. So beware of this intellectual terrorism which is being done. And then one more thing, which just to clarify, this was said by some of us that regional council is something which BJP had proposed and they have addressed it. And some of our people who had not read the report completely also believed so, but it's not that. Somewhere about 10 years ago, when Mr. Venkataya Naidu was the president, national president, we passed a national resolution that there should be 3 regional councils, which was with a national perspective. You could have these regional councils in any state, wherever you find that there is a grievance of equitable distribution of resources not taking place. So we said there could be 3 regional councils, Jammu, Ladakh, Kashmir, for administrative and financial equitable distribution. Okay. Somebody at that time also said, sir, what about legislative power? And Mr. Naidu, oh, what are you talking? You will have another assembly. So this was in a very fair, gentlemanly suggestion, and a resolution passed. What they have suggested is not our resolution. They say you have a regional council with the power to pass sub-legislation. Now what is that sub-legislation? We don't know. They are saying that sub-legislation will be a legislation based on the legislation passed by the assembly. You cannot have 2 assemblies in a state or 3 assemblies in a state. And then, but for the answer they have given is that you have a bill passed by the assembly. If you want certain changes, modification, depending on, you have a sub-legislation. Now how that sub-legislation will come forward, there is no provision in the constitution. He said then you will go to the some 8th schedule, 6th schedule of the constitution, and we'll make an amendment, we'll bring it to the parliament, pass it to 2/3, and then you'll have something. So neither there will be enough, na Nauman tel hoga, na Radha nachegi. So this is not our resolution. This is all fake. And they also say this regional council will be also subject to Article 356, which Professor Sridhar was talking about, which has been a matter of debate since the times of Indira Gandhi. So Chief Minister could use Article 356 here also. If he believes that the regional council is not functioning in the manner that he should expect it to function, he could recommend to the governor that you dismiss it and appoint the administrator. So it is not written with a true democratic spirit. And last of all, which is not too significant to be included in the official this thing, but just bring to your notice that in most of the states, the arrangement that we have in the administrative setup is that we have 66% from the IAS cadre and we have 44% from the provincial cadre. Sometimes they call it provincial services, some call it Punjab service, some call it Kashmir service, whatever. In the state of Jammu and Kashmir, they have 50-50, which already we have been objecting to. And the interlocutor says, no, you increase the state quota. So if in other states it is 66% IAS, it will become 66% in Jammu and Kashmir. So whatever little linkage is left. So these are some of the things which we have officially refuted and try to change the discourse. We would welcome discussion rather, because instead of this monologue going on, and thank God the hall is illuminated, otherwise you don't even know that the audience is sleeping or awake. The person goes on talking. So